I was sitting by the floor-to-ceiling window of my apartment, my silk blouse brushing softly against my wrist as the city hummed below. The sunlight spilled across my desk, highlighting the neat stack of contracts I had finally finished reviewing. From the outside, it looked like I had it all together: success, composure, control. But no one knew about the nights I cried into a pillow after long workdays, or the shame I felt keeping my family at arm's length. Then my phone buzzed. A text from my mother, curt and sharp. "Your sister left the kids with you again.
Come home. Now."
My stomach twisted. I had already handled this, over and over. Her drunken calls, the chaos she abandoned on my doorstep, the family that somehow chose her side every single time. I ran my fingers along the smooth edge of my desk, grounding myself. I could feel my heartbeat, steady but tense. I looked out at the skyline, the city alive with movement, and for a fleeting moment, I imagined my life without the shadows of my past, without the weight of her chaos dumped on me. And yet, I couldn't ignore it. Not this time. Not when the children's frightened eyes would meet mine, silently asking for the stability their mother had never provided. I took a deep breath, smoothed the folds of my blouse, and typed back a reply that I knew would change everything. "I'm on my way. But this time, it ends differently." I remember the first time it all fell apart. I was 23, fresh out of college, full of dreams, and still naive enough to believe my family would support me no matter what. My sister, Jenna, had always been the charming one, smiles that could light up a room, laughter that made everyone overlook her sharp edges. But charm doesn't cover cruelty, and by the time she had her first child, the cracks were impossible to ignore. It was a rainy Tuesday when she appeared at my doorstep, her eyes red, smelling faintly of whiskey. "I can't do this anymore," she slurred, her hands shaking. "Take the kids. Just for a while." I froze, the words sinking like stones. My heart raced, my hands trembling as I looked at the two little faces peeking out from behind her coat, innocent, trusting, terrified. I called my mother, hoping she would intervene. "She's just stressed," Mom said, dismissively. "It's her problem, not yours. Stop overreacting." Her voice was soft, but the meaning was sharp. Handle it, or be the one everyone thinks is weak. And just like that, the responsibility fell on me. Alone. My grandmother had once given me a small silver locket, saying, "Never forget who you are, even when everyone else forgets you." I clutched it now, letting the cool metal press into my palm, a reminder that I could stand, even when the world expected me to crumble. By the end of that week, I had packed up my apartment, found extra childcare, and settled the children in my home. I had no idea how I was going to do it, but I made a silent promise. I would not break. Not for them, not for my family, and certainly not for Jenna. That locket wasn't just jewelry anymore. It was a symbol of the life I was about to build for myself and the kids she abandoned. And so, the first day of my real battle began, not with fists or anger, but with quiet determination and the weight of responsibility heavier than I had ever known. Those first months were a blur of sleepless nights, spilled coffee, and quiet panic. I learned to function on fragmented hours of sleep, balancing my 9 to 5 with late-night tutoring sessions, doctor's appointments, and homework help for the kids. Every evening, I watched them sleep and promised myself that someday they would grow up in a world where stability wasn't a fleeting luxury. It wasn't easy. Jenna called in sporadically, demanding attention, blaming me for taking her life away. My family, as usual, backed her, offering hollow apologies or simply shaking their heads. But in the shadows of those long nights, I discovered my own resilience. I found my mentor, Claire Donovan, a seasoned woman in finance with a sharp wit and sharper instincts. She saw something in me that even I doubted existed. "You're not just surviving, Emily," she told me once, handing me a notebook filled with potential investment strategies. "You're capable of thriving if you stop doubting yourself." That notebook became my blueprint. I devoured every page, every lesson, and began taking small but deliberate steps toward independence. First came the freelance consulting project, a modest contract that barely covered extra childcare costs. Then a bigger client, impressed by my meticulous attention to detail. Slowly, steadily, the puzzle pieces of my new life began to fit together. During those nights, I would often sit on my tiny balcony, watching the city lights flicker below, and imagine a future that seemed impossibly far away. I worked through self-doubt, through exhaustion, through the gnawing fear that one day Jenna or my family would undermine everything I built. I refused to let them define my worth. And while I shared smiles and modest updates with my mother and cousins, I kept the real progress hidden. They saw only the surface, the overworked, struggling aunt who handled her niece and nephew with grace. They didn't see the deals I closed, the bank statements that grew steadily, or the quiet sense of power that came from building something entirely my own. By the end of that year, I had carved out a small but thriving consultancy, enough to provide security for the children and for myself. I had become someone who could weather storms, someone who could smile in the face of chaos, and someone who no longer needed anyone's approval to know my worth. It was a Saturday afternoon when the knock came. I had been reviewing quarterly reports, the soft hum of my office computer filling the room. I wasn't expecting anyone, certainly not my mother, father, and Jenna, all appearing at my doorstep in unison. Their faces carried that same mixture of expectation and pity I'd grown so accustomed to over the years. "Emily," my mother began, her voice carefully measured, "we just wanted to check in, see how the kids are doing." I gestured for them to enter, and as they stepped inside, I watched their expressions shift, almost imperceptibly, as they took in the space around them. My office wasn't just neat, it was curated, intentional. Expensive abstract art lined the walls, a sleek mahogany desk gleamed under the sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, and on a nearby shelf, a row of books marked milestones in business, finance, and personal growth. The children's drawings were framed in subtle, elegant frames, proof that I had never let go of warmth, even in the midst of ambition. They lingered in the doorway, hesitant. I offered coffee, which they declined, the silence stretching uncomfortably. Finally, I broke it. "You all thought I was struggling, didn't you?" I said, my voice calm, steady, yet carrying an edge that made them flinch. Jenna's mouth opened and closed, words caught somewhere between apology and denial. "You thought I would collapse under responsibility, that I would crumble without your approval. But I didn't." I led them to the seating area, sitting with the children on my lap, watching their innocent eyes take in the scene. "This consultancy I run, this isn't small. I'm not barely scraping by. I have clients across 3 states. My net worth is 6 figures, and it's growing. The children have everything they need, and more importantly, stability, love, and a home that isn't chaos." My mother gasped, a hand covering her mouth. My father's shoulders stiffened. Jenna's face went pale, the facade of control slipping for the first time. They exchanged glances, silently calculating the damage of years spent underestimating me. I leaned back, letting them absorb it fully, letting the weight of my words settle. "All this," I said, gesturing to the office, to the children, to my carefully built life, "is what happens when someone finally decides to take responsibility for themselves and for those who depend on them." Jenna shifted uncomfortably. I didn't know you could," she stammered, as if realizing for the first time that the world hadn't come crashing down without her. "No," I said softly but firmly. "You didn't. But I did. And this time, everyone will know the truth." They looked at me in stunned silence, the kind that comes when assumptions shatter and reality burns brighter than any expectation. For the first time in years, the balance had shifted. I held the cards now, not in a spiteful way, but in a way that demanded respect, honesty, and accountability. My family, those who had once dismissed me, looked fragile under the weight of my calm authority. I met my mother's eyes first. "If you want to be part of these children's lives in a meaningful way," I said, "then it has to be on terms that protect them and me. That means no more enabling Jenna. No more excuses. And honest communication. Every single time." Her shoulders sagged, but she nodded, swallowing pride and guilt alike. Jenna was harder. Her eyes darted around the office as if searching for an escape route. "And you?" she whispered, almost too small to hear. "I'll help you," I said, voice steady. "But only if you commit to real change. You will attend parenting classes.
Therapy.
You will contribute financially and emotionally to your children. You will stop manipulating and using everyone else as a buffer for your irresponsibility. No more shortcuts. No more lies." I turned to my father. "You've stayed silent for too long, letting patterns repeat. If you want to rebuild trust, it starts with supporting me and enforcing these boundaries, rather than protecting the person who repeatedly caused harm." I could see it in their faces, the disbelief, the shame, the hesitation, but also the flicker of hope. For the first time, the power wasn't mine to surrender. It was a chance to create accountability while fostering growth, compassion without compromise, firmness without cruelty. Then I looked at the children, their small hands reaching for mine. "I am doing this for you," I said softly. "For your safety, your future, and the love you deserve." I realized that empowerment wasn't about revenge or proving anyone wrong. It was about creating conditions where respect and responsibility mattered more than family titles or blood ties. This was my line in the sand. And if anyone wanted to cross it, they had to step up or step aside. In that moment, I felt a calm satisfaction. I wasn't just protecting the kids, I was protecting myself. And that strength, that clarity, was something no one could take away. Not Jenna. Not my family. Not anyone. Weeks passed, and I watched small changes ripple through my family. Jenna attended every parenting session and therapy appointment, awkward and hesitant at first, but gradually showing signs of real effort. My mother learned to listen without judgment, to offer help without enabling, and even my father began holding boundaries instead of avoiding conflict. The children thrived. Their laughter filled the apartment in ways it never had before, unburdened, unafraid. And in the quiet moments, when they curled up beside me with soft, trusting eyes, I felt the full weight of my journey. Every late night, every tear, every moment of doubt had led to this, a life built not just on survival, but on intention, love, and unwavering resolve. I touched the silver locket my grandmother had given me years ago, worn now and slightly tarnished. Its cool weight against my chest reminded me of the promise I had made to myself back then, to never forget who I was, even when everyone else did. Now, it symbolized more than survival. It was strength, independence, and the clarity that comes from standing firm without bitterness. I looked out my window at the city below, lights beginning to twinkle as dusk settled. The chaos of my past no longer dictated my present. I had built a home, a career, and a sense of self that was unshakable. My family had learned, slowly, that change was possible, but the responsibility to act rested squarely on their shoulders. And in that moment, I whispered to myself, softly but resolutely, "I am enough. I am strong. I am free." The words weren't for anyone else. They were for me. And for the first time in years, I believed them fully.